We would like to provide you full transparency through the entire purchase funnel. We can tell you how many people click the ads, but then also how many people added the item to the cart and how many people purchased at what retailers. I mean, that's an incredibly powerful value proposition to brands.
The startup investment landscape is changing, and world-class companies are being built outside of Silicon Valley. We find them, talk with them, and discuss the upside of investing in them. Welcome to Upside.
Woo!
Hello, and welcome to the Upside Podcast, first podcast finding upside outside of Silicon Valley. I'm Eric Hornung, and I'm accompanied by my co-host, Mr. Platform Partnership himself, Jay Klaus. What's going on, man?
Which platform did I partner with?
Look, historically, you've been an anti-platform partnership guy. You've been, I can build this on my own. And recently, you started doing a LinkedIn newsletter. You're taking off, Jay. You're joining the rocket ship.
This is true. I have found that for several years, I really focused on building my own distribution systems, which is very frustrating and difficult. And I've recently come around to realize that if you work alongside and through existing distribution platforms, it can do great things for you and the goals that you have for yourself. So on LinkedIn, with the LinkedIn newsletter, recently put my freelancing school courses on teachable.com, their new Discover platform. I'm learning a lot about SEO, Eric. It's time to become friends with the Googs.
What's a Goog?
Google. Friends with Google.
Oh, you and Google are on a first four-letter basis?
Yes, I'm becoming friends with the Googs. That's what I'm saying. It's important to become friends with the Googs if you want people to find you organically through search. And let me tell you, SEO, not rocket science by any means. There's actually quite a bit of learning that I had to do. It all makes good sense, but it's very learnable. Very learnable. The actual doing of the thing is not fun. It's like my least favorite type of writing and the most important writing that I could be doing right now.
Is it tedious writing or is it just like buzzwordy writing?
It's tedious. It's very analytical. Like you find exactly the keyword phrases that you want to use or you want to compete for. And then you have to do like very detailed research for the like first 7 to 10 results for what's already ranking for that keyword phrase. And you literally break down some of the component parts of those, including the number of words per piece, the number of headers, H1s, H2s, H3s, H4s, H5s. And then you kind of average them together and you have like this playbook of, okay, if I want to compete for this, it needs to be this many words-ish. It needs to have this many headers-ish. And I need to have the keyword phrase in the title, in the first line of the first paragraph. Like it's all these little boxes to tick, which takes a lot of the creativity out of the writing. You could also argue that it's a constraint that makes you more creative in a way, but it's definitely less free-flowing and more structured and analytical.
There's this concept out there that SEO makes Google stronger and better because it's a bunch of individual creators trying to make Google better, essentially. But as you're walking through that, I can't help but think, is this actually good for the person who goes on Google that everybody's trying to do this one exact thing?
I think yes. I mean, Google, their North Star is always going to be, we want to give you the best answer to your question first. Like they're getting better at natural language processing and breaking things down to be, how well was this received by the person that actually landed on this page? So even though all those things I just ran through are still mechanically some of the ways you can be sure to work within their algorithms and their ranking, there are so many more factors that people just aren't actually aware of. And Google's continuing to get better to get the best piece of content that actually answers this question, gives people a good experience. So I do think it's better for people at the end of the day.
You really are playing nicely with the Googs. That was
becoming friends with the Googs.
Yeah, you could snip that and just send it right over to Larry and Sergey.
Hey, if you want to win, you got to play nice with the people who are already winning. And that is a model that our guest today is figuring out himself. Today, we're talking with Eric Martell, the founder of Pear Commerce. Pear Commerce enables CPG companies to drive real transactions from existing national ads and retailers to build their online channel with new customers and repeat purchases. Speaking of win-win-win, he says customers get the products they want from where they want them, when they want them. Retailers, CPG companies, customers all win. Pear Commerce is based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Eric is a venture partner at Generator. He was the managing director of Generator Minnesota until September 2018, at which point he went through the Brandery in Cincinnati, and I got connected to him. But the company was founded in just 2018, and they've raised just over $1 million from the Brandery and some angel investors.
Jay, does this count as part of the e-commerce blitz?
E-commerce and retail blitz?
Blitz.
I would say no. It's part of a growing trend of CPG on the podcast here, Eric. And you know what they say.
When there's a trend in CPG, it's got to be for me.
Not a bad ad lib. I was going to say good things come in consumer packages.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
Not bad, right? Also an ad lib. If you have any bad puns, listener, about what they say about CPG, you can tweet at us at UpsideFM or email us hello@upside.fm, and we'll get into that interview with Eric right after this. Eric, let's pretend that you're going to take initiative and start a company. You following?
Never done that.
All right. Well, you helped start the Up company here, so a little concerned.
Just kidding, Jay. Of course let's pretend. Let's go down your hypothetical path.
And let's pretend that you are trying to find some of the most talented engineers to help you get that company started. How many engineers do you think you know?
Not enough.
Not enough. And that's why I would recommend you work with our friends over at Integrity Power Search. Integrity Power Search is the #1 full-stack, high-growth startup recruiting firm between the coasts. They partner with venture capitalists, private equity groups, and CEOs like you, Eric, to build amazing teams to the world's most disrupting companies. If I'm hiring, if I'm trying to find good engineers, I'm not going to rely on my small group of connections. I'm going to go to a group like Integrity Power Search, who has thousands and thousands of potential connections, potential hires for my company.
That sounds like enough to me.
Sounds like enough. Sounds like you're going to find the best talent when you can dip into a larger pool. They've executed more than 600 searches successfully, and they're on track for more than 200 in 2019 alone. Their clients have collectively raised over $2.5 billion with a B, Eric, in venture capital funding and counting. So if you guys want to learn more about Integrity Power Search, go to upside.fm/integrity to get started with their team. This episode is sponsored by RIMS. RIMS is a global organization dedicated to the profession of risk management. For nearly 60 years, RIMS has delivered the latest strategies and resources that allow risk professionals to grow, innovate, and succeed in any business. RIMS works with industry leaders to produce content and online training that business professionals turn to. Topics include business continuity, cyber risk, risk management techniques, the fundamentals of insurance, and more. There is also a private members-only site where people can discuss sensitive issues and get honest answers. In that members-only site, members have been leaning on each other as we all navigate the global pandemic. If you're concerned about the safety of your employees and the sustainability of your organization, you need the resources and connections that RIMS provides. Learn more at go.rims.org/upside. That's go.rims.org/upside. And you can save 25% off a year-long membership. Eric, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me, guys.
Always great to have another Eric with a C on the podcast.
The C is for cool.
The C is for cool. Oh man, I'm going to use that. Eric, on Upside, we like to start with a background of the founders. So can you tell us about the history of you, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have now been kind of exploring the world of entrepreneurship for about a decade, which is, kind of an amazing coincidence in and of itself, because as a kid, I didn't grow up as like the guy who was doing the lemonade stands at the corner when, you're 6 years old. I never was one of the people who walked around and said, hey, I want to start my own business when I grow up. But my first startup kind of more happened to me than was exactly like hashed out of a master plan. Back when I was a student at the University of Wisconsin, I had a really, really bad experience ordering food online from a local sub restaurant. The quality of the website that they were using to accept orders online was just absolutely horrible. And it probably born more out of frustration and overpaying for miscalculations calculations on the item totals. We actually, and when I say we, myself and my college roommates, approached them and asked if we could build them a higher quality online ordering solution. So that sub restaurant agreed to that. And over the course of the next decade or so, the company's still around. That grew into a company called EatStreet, which today works with 15,000 restaurants nationwide in all 50 states, raised about $50 million in venture capital. It is still based in Madison, Wisconsin, where we went to school. So if it wasn't for having a really, really bad ordering experience from a local restaurant, I'd probably be sitting at a desk somewhere working for, I don't know, Target
Epic?
or something. Yeah, Epic. Exactly. Really kind of grateful that inspiration struck at the right moment, and obviously super grateful to my first startup experience. I was there for 8 years, left at the end of 2016, and joined a startup accelerator called Generator. That's also when I moved from Madison, Wisconsin to the Twin Cities, helped open an office. I know Adam Cho has been on the podcast. Joe Kurgis has been on the podcast. So, there's plenty of references to Generator in the past, but was really proud to be on that team, which really kind of amounted to supporting startups in any way that I possibly could. Honestly, leading more or less a 12-week startup boot camp. Did that a couple times, and then really kind of got inspired enough by the entrepreneurs that I was working with. And I always knew that my first startup was by no means going to be my last. So got the call of the wild about 18 months ago. Went ahead and started Pear Commerce, actually with one of my co-founders from my first venture as well. So it's fun to get the band back together and be jamming on a totally new concept.
How did you guys go from, hey, restaurant, can we please fix your website so we can order sandwiches, to, all right, let's go ahead and raise $50 million of venture capital?
Incrementally, to say the least. It was not something, I think, until maybe year 2 that we even necessarily expected to be kind of a career move. We started that business while we were in college. We were still taking classes at the time. None of us really necessarily right off the bat thought that we were going to turn this website into something that would be self-sustaining as a business. In fact, really probably the underlying motivation for all three of us was build something that gets to just enough scale that we can put it on our resume, and maybe that'll help us get a job with Google someday. We were, kind of pleasantly surprised at the way that it took off. One of the really seminal moments that kind of set us on the road to probably raising capital and really trying to grow the business as a startup was a promotion that we did with a local restaurant in Madison, where we were actually giving out free General Tso's chicken if you ordered on the website. And those days we had 300 to 400 college students who were claiming their free chicken. I mean, giving away free food to college kids is not a very difficult thing to actually do. But that just kind of, exploded the business in a way that after that, the trajectory was just sort of set that 20% month over month growth for years and years in a row. And during that time, then we were obviously able to attract the interest of investors along the way.
But not being the kid with the lemonade stand and not saying I wanted to be an entrepreneur, how did you react to that? When did you start to say, all right, I guess I'll do it?
I think I got pretty hooked, actually, pretty early. The whole concept of kind of working for yourself and building towards something that you had equity in, both in terms of, obviously financial equity, but also just pride in ownership and self-actualization. I never knew that was I guess, to be a little poetic about it, the missing piece in my life. But as soon as I discovered that, there was certainly no going back. So the rest has been kind of history after that.
Tell us about your co-founders in that venture and this next venture.
Absolutely. So my two co-founders at EatStreet, Matt Howard, who is still there as the CEO, Alex Wyler, who is my co-founder here at Pear Commerce as well. Matt's background actually was perfectly suited to going after restaurants. When we had the idea to get EatStreet started, the one thing that Alex and I recognized, Alex is a software developer. That's my background as well. The one thing that we recognized was that both of us were pretty painfully shy at the time and not necessarily ready to just go out and start knocking on restaurant doors and getting yelled at by restaurant owners. Matt was actually working that summer between, I think it was our sophomore and junior years of college, as a car salesman. He didn't want to go back and move in with his parents again during the summer, so he had managed to lock down this sales gig at a local car dealership in Madison. It was actually leading the entire dealership for sales that summer. So there were these, kind of gray-haired guys who had been selling cars for 30 years, and this, kid was actually selling more cars than anybody else at the dealership. And Matt being one of my really good friends too, I was like, holy crap, this guy can really sell stuff effectively. And likewise, I mean, is a great friend and somebody that I want to start a company with. That was, kind of where Matt came at it with. And, again, he's still at the helm of that company. Alex and I have known each other because we're both from Milwaukee and then both majored in computer science at the University of Wisconsin. Alex, one of the most talented software developers that I've ever met. We had studied together in classes. We had worked in internships together and had, become very good personal friends, as well as somebody that I knew that I kind of, would love to start a company with. So he was another really natural choice. And again, I mean, through kind of the crazy ups and downs of the last decade, it's awesome to be back and working with Alex again as we build out our new business. And our message to Matt has always been that the door's open, but he's got a pretty big enterprise that he's running right now. So I don't think he's walking away from that anytime soon.
What pulled you out of EatStreet and towards Generator?
I think, for me, it always kind of comes down to the two things that I'm looking for every day on the job are basically personal development and then satisfaction and like enjoyment of what I'm doing. I mean, EatStreet was one of the best runs of my life and something that I'm always going to be grateful for. And obviously, I'm very good terms with the folks back there. But I think there was a point where the headcount had gotten to such a size where it was probably no longer my speed, so that personal enjoyment on a day-to-day basis had gone down just a little bit, just due to the fact that I think I have a lot more fun when it's, anywhere between 3 and 20 people in a room just kind of throwing solutions at a wall than the headcount at the time that I left. The other piece being personal development. Obviously, I was still learning stuff every day while I was there, but at the same time, had a pretty good idea of what it's like to run a food ordering company after having done it for 7 or 8 years. And when the opportunity to work with Generator came up, which would teach me kind of the other side of the table, learning about startup investing and give me an opportunity to work with a bunch of companies and learn from a bunch of companies and all their respective business models, it was a hard offer to pass up. So that's kind of what led me to that next chapter.
How do you balance your proclivity to work in 3 to 20 person size company and the company you're building currently, which may scale past that?
I think it's first of all a day by day thing. And second of all, people are never the same people over the course of years. If I compare myself at the end of 2016 to myself today, I'm certainly, both aspiring to and planning on, staying involved and sticking around and being a co-founder at a company, even if, again, we cross over the 20 employee mark or the 100 employee mark, or, we're really swinging for the fence on this one as well. I think it was more, kind of almost circumstantial to where my headspace was a couple of years ago, which doesn't necessarily mean that that's always where my headspace is going to be. So I guess if I think about like where I'm dedicating my time and effort to my daydreams, it's getting to the point where that's a problem in the first place. Like if we could scale Pear to the point where all of a sudden it feels like it's too big a company for me, I'll have been very happy to have gotten there. And candidly, in our early stages that we're at right now, we're a long enough way away that, I'm spending all my time with my head down trying to grow this thing.
Before we get into Pear, one last question on EatStreet. How often do you find yourself comparing the current progress of Pear with the past progress and then maybe nostalgic remembrances of EatStreet?
So the answer is, obviously it's kind of hard not to. So I am, kind of putting the businesses side by side in terms of their relative age and saying, how do we compare today to how we were doing about a decade ago at this point? I'd say that the saving grace for Pear that kind of keeps me from going crazy that way is the fact that Pear is very much a B2B company, whereas EatStreet as a marketplace had restaurant partners, but also, a large number of diners who are the people actually ordering food from us. And because that comparison is imperfect, I think it actually takes a little bit of stress back off of my shoulders and Alex's shoulders, because we recognize that we're building something that's fundamentally so different than our previous company that even if I tried really hard to make the comparison, it's kind of hard to, which I think, is in a lot of ways a saving grace because it's not always in the back of my mind as a result.
Let's talk about what happened while you're at Generator that started to pull you towards this new opportunity. When did you start to open your eyes to starting another company?
So the co-founders at Generator, and Generator was the first investor into EatStreet, I should say. So I've known Joe and Troy, the co-founders at Generator, for almost as long as I've been building companies. And when I joined Generator, I came in with a very explicit disclaimer that after 2 years or so, I was going to go and probably start another company. So it was more a question of what than it was a question of if or when. The genesis of Pear actually came from inspiration that I got from my girlfriend, who at the time was running marketing for a consumer packaged goods company in the Twin Cities. And listening to her frustrations surrounding running digital ads, but having a product that was perishable. They make turkey sort of meat products like burger patties, brats, etc. Because those products are perishable, they didn't sell them actually on their company website. You'd have to go into a grocery store to actually buy their product. So hearing her frustrations around, hey, we're running Instagram ads, we're getting a lot of eyeballs, a lot of impressions. We have no idea, if basically those impressions are sticking with people, if it's actually giving us lifted sales. When I heard that, I was like, oh, this is such a cool problem. And I bet you it exists in such a large number of companies and product lines that if we can crack the nut on this, that's a hell of an opportunity. So I think that was sort of the first domino to fall that got me to a point where once Alex and I came up with a couple ideas for creative solutions, that it was like, okay, we got to go off to the races and we got to build something here.
In my experience of dating, sometimes when your girlfriend tells you a problem, she just wants you to say, I'm listening and thank you for sharing that with me, and not go and solve a $1 billion problem. When you started thinking about solutions for this, how did that go?
I would say that my girlfriend was very patient with me, especially as I brought up a bunch of dumb ideas, and you are totally correct. I think the saving grace here was that her frustrations and challenges on this front were strictly professional frustrations and challenges. So I think, she was willing to provide like a fair amount of feedback, and we never got into any corners that way.
So tell me more about this problem.
Sure.
If this is such a painful problem for the companies that are spending a ton of money on Instagram, explain a little bit more why that's still a problem and why that hasn't already been solved.
Yeah. So let's use Pepsi and Coke as example companies. Pepsi and Coke, each have dozens of brands underneath their umbrellas. But we'll talk about their flagship products, Pepsi and Coke themselves. And if you think about a 12-pack of Pepsi, it's pretty heavy, it's bulky, and at the same time, it's super inexpensive. I mean, it costs practically nothing. They make all their money by selling at volume. And as a result of that, if you go to Pepsi.com, you can't buy Pepsi from Pepsi. And that's because it's a really, really difficult and expensive supply chain problem. If you were to buy 12 packs of Pepsi directly from PepsiCo, they would have to go to UPS or FedEx, or they'd have to pull a Jeff Bezos and build out their own delivery infrastructure, which isn't going to happen, in order to get that product onto your front doorstep. They can put up an e-commerce website. That's really easy. But actually, the physical process of getting the product into your hands is really, really difficult when you're selling a $3 item that weighs like 10 pounds. That same issue applies to any perishable goods. I mean, think about an ice cream company, for instance, and trying to put a tub of ice cream, in the mail to, try to get it into an individual consumer's hands. You're going to have to pack that thing with dry ice. It's going to cost you, $100 to sell a product that's worth like less than $10. Now, it's really good fortune for us that this problem exists in an area where people spend such a tremendously large amount of money. But Procter & Gamble, for instance, consumer packaged goods company, probably, the largest one in the world, nearly all of their brands face this challenge, and they spend $15 billion a year on marketing. That whole issue of incredible ad spend, but ad spend that really does nothing more than build awareness because the supply chain to get the product into consumers' hands just simply doesn't exist, presented a heck of an opportunity for us to kind of try to bridge the gap and allow those digital ads to actually drive consumption as well as awareness of the products.
I want to get a little bit more detailed here. So I have all of these cans of Pepsi, I have this ice cream, and since I can't do it one-off direct to consumer, I'm selling through grocery stores, right?
That's exactly it.
And so those retailers are making big bulk orders, and I'm spending money on advertisements as Pepsi, because if those retailers don't sell through their stock, they're not going to buy again? Or how does that look?
Yeah, as Pepsi or Procter & Gamble or Coke, any of these big companies, the reason that you're deploying large amounts of basically awareness dollars kind of comes to, that moment of truth, which is actually something that people talk about in this industry when somebody's walking down the aisle of a grocery store, where it's like, okay, now I am in the soda section. Am I going to sample, especially a lot of this money gets deployed against new product launches. Am I going to try like the orange flavored Diet Coke that just launched? And it really, it's like an arms race between these different brands where everybody deploys so much capital to try to get mind share of the consumers, and yet they're not there actually at the point of purchase, that they need to build such a strong emotional connection, or at least recognizability, that when somebody is just kind of idling around with the shopping cart, they say, yes, this is the product that I want to buy. Or when they're on Instacart, for that matter, and filling out their shopping list. You've got to not only make a strong enough impression at the moment that somebody saw the ad that they resonate with it, but a strong enough impression that that ad is, to an extent, even subconsciously sticking with you 24, 48 hours later when you're going to buy groceries.
Help me understand this from the consumer's perspective and their workflow. I shop at Whole Foods. Maybe that's a bad example for the grocery here, but let's pretend like it all works. And I usually drink Michelob Ultras. So I saw a commercial. This is the traditional route. I saw a commercial for Michelob Ultra Gold. I was in Whole Foods. I saw that Michelob Ultra Gold was there. I tried it out. That's kind of the situation you're describing. How does that work with Pear? Like, when am I purchasing that? When am I seeing it? What am I clicking on?
Right. I haven't even explained exactly what we do. So I'm glad to transition into that. Before I do, actually, you have to try Michelob Golden Light at some point. It's a beer that I guess for whatever reason really got its roots here in Minnesota, and 95% of all Mick Golden Light gets drank in the state of Minnesota, but they do sell it out of state, and it's hard to know exactly why we ended up in this spot, but like if you're driving through Minneapolis, St. Paul, you'll see billboards that say like Minnesota's beer, and it's like this weird Michelob brand that nobody else in the country knows about, but everybody.
What a great fact! We call them Rick Ultras down here in Ohio. We don't actually, but I do.
I love it. So for this example, let's imagine again that you're on Instagram and you see an ad for Michelob Golden Light, the Minnesota beer, and you see that ad and it says, hey, you can buy this beer potentially at a discount, click here, or tap here, I should say. Whereas that ad in the past would have taken you to Michelob.com, which, having never been to Michelob.com, I'm willing to bet is a website with a lot of content, but very little actually interesting information. Like if you want to read the nutrition facts about your beer, like go nuts. But, that's going to be basically a dead end on the internet where nothing should ever dead end. Instead, you're taken to a landing page of our product, which is going to list off all of your local and national retailers that sell Mick Golden. So it's going to say, hey, you can get it from Kroger, you can get it from Total Wine, you can get it from Whole Foods, to your example. Now, at that point, if you click on any of those links, we have an integration in with the retailer that's going to get the item added directly to the shopping cart. If the retailer wants to incentivize you as a shopper to click on their retailer as opposed to the other ones on the list, they could add an incentive too, like maybe get $3 off a 12-pack or something along those lines. Basically, what we're doing is taking this ad, which, for lack of a better way to describe it, was static, didn't really lead anywhere that actually could result in a purchase, and instead, bridge the gap between, a database that we have of about 6,100 retailers at this point, whose product pages we can link to, and very often get the item into the shopping cart, and actually allow a consumer to, impulse engage with the ad and potentially go ahead and make that purchase right on the spot.
So when I'm making that purchase, let's say I buy the Michelob Golden, is that getting shipped to me, or am I picking it up at the store? Am I going about my normal workflow of grocery shopping and I just pick it up and when I check out, it's free? Like, how does...
Yeah, really good question. So yeah, that was kind of the eureka moment for us, actually. It was like, hey, it's really hard for Michelob to get this product into your hands. But there's a grocery store or a liquor store that's like, let's say, probably less than a mile away that may have home delivery or curbside pickup. So if we can, link in with their e-commerce, we could basically allow a consumer to shop the way that they might shop digitally anyways, or help bring them into the digital age and actually get them to place their first online grocery order. Really, at that point, it's between the consumer and the retailer as far as how they get their food or beer in this case. Like it could be a drop off stuff if the retailer is offering home delivery. It could be an in-store pickup, but our whole, kind of mission is to allow people to, fill a shopping cart on the internet, make a buy, and then at that point, it's really kind of consumer preference and retailer preference that, dictates exactly how you're going to get it, be it going to Target and picking up on the curbside or getting something dropped off directly on your doorstep, using a local grocery store as basically the means with which to get that product to you.
How do you deal with non-normal demand cycles? So right now we're sitting here in a pandemic, and if there was an ad on Pear Commerce for toilet paper, it would be very hard to have that person buy and fill. Are you guys integrated with the stock? Or like, let's say you have a very successful ad for, we'll go back to McGolden, and every Kroger in Minneapolis runs out of McGolden. How does that work that people they don't feel like they're paying for something and not get something?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer to that is that we are integrated with the in and out of stocks. The ads will automatically trigger themselves off if there's no way that we can get this product to consumers' hands. Obviously, right now is a super interesting time to be talking about this because our earlier retailer partners, and candidly, just about all of them at this point, are booked out super far in advance. In fact, I was just able for the first time, in a month and a half, to place an Amazon Fresh order myself to actually get some stuff delivered to my house. But obviously, all of our retailers, be they Amazon or your neighborhood grocery store, have been hit with this tidal wave of demand, which has, just like cards on the table, resulted in us actually, toggling out the majority of our advertising because it's better for us to kind of wait for the demand to smooth out than have people try to buy stuff online and have a dead end. I mean, that's a terrible experience. It reflects negatively on our brands. It reflects negatively on our retailers. So we've basically kind of, pulled back on that for the time being. We're already seeing retailers being far more able to answer consumer demand. So we think that we're going to be back to business as usual in the next couple of weeks. But at a very tactical level, we also have down to the minute toggling of whether or not these ads are able to, service specific products or if our retailers are out of them. And if we have no retailers that can service them, then the ads themselves stop running on Facebook or Instagram or wherever they were running.
I want to talk a little bit about the model because it seems obvious to me that the brands themselves are probably the customer or at least a customer.
Mm-hmm.
How does it work with retailers? Do you kind of pull them onto the platform based on what you can find online? Or are they having to create an account so they can do things like incentivize the shopper to pick their retail stop?
The onboarding process on both sides is really easy. And actually, we do have two customers. It's a lot like EatStreet in that way that I'd say that if Alex and I have kind of a specialty, it is like bridging the gap between two different parties for a mutual win. The brands actually are not even the paying customers. We go to brands and basically say, hey, you had this really, candidly, kind of lame setup to your online advertising in the past. You were taking people back to the brand website. There's really just nothing there for consumers. We would like to provide you full transparency through the entire purchase funnel. We can tell you how many people click the ads, but then also how many people added the item to the cart and how many people purchased at what retailers. I mean, that's an incredibly powerful value proposition to brands. But our opportunity then is if we can get brands to start running advertisements that run through our landing pages, our store pickers, then we basically have the ability to go to the retailer themselves and say, hey, we have all this traffic that's being provided by Procter & Gamble. We want to send new business your way, resulting in new account registrations and new actual purchases on your e-commerce website. In order to work with us, we're basically modeling out a pay-per-click advertising plan. Now, the eureka moment actually for us came a while ago when I was on Facebook and I saw two ads in a row. One was for Target and one was for Swiffer. And Swiffer's a Procter & Gamble product. Procter & Gamble is a huge percentage. It's got to be 30% of Target's overall sales are Procter products. And the Swiffer ad was taking you to Swiffer.com, which is a bunch of, smiling models mopping and really not a whole lot else in terms of interesting content. And Target, would love to sell more Swiffers. And it was hey, bridging that gap, we could actually help save everybody efficiency and money because we can, give Procter & Gamble a much better call to action off of their ads. And then in the case of Target, we could sell them traffic at a less expensive rate than that Facebook ad that they're running right now. So if they're paying, Facebook an average of, say, $25 to $50 for a new account registration, we can price out our pay-per-click advertising to the retailer to be more like $10 for a new account acquisition. And so even though we're going to retailers and saying, yes, to list with us, you have to pay us, we're actually saying you have to pay us, but you can actually have like the most efficient pay-per-click advertising solution relative to if you were running ads direct on Facebook, Instagram, etc. So we're saving retailers money and we're making this free for CPGs. And at the same time, since we're basically reselling traffic that we get for free, we get to take the difference between what retailers are willing to pay for it and the free traffic, that obviously costs us nothing coming off of the branded advertisements.
How do you think about the industry that you're selling into then? Because you have like the big dogs in retail. You have Kroger, Target, Walmart, Amazon now. And then you have like a very small regional group and then a lot of little bodegas and mom and pop type retail shops. So who are you selling to in that group of those kind of three categories?
I would say to get started, we're kind of going after the middle group that you talked about. So the nice thing about our technology is even if we don't have a formal partnership with Kroger yet, I can link to a Kroger product page for Swiffer. And if that's going to help us kind of gain credibility, gain scale in these early days, I mean, of course, we're going to do that. But we're mostly approaching our local grocers, but not the bodegas, the ones, maybe with anywhere between 20 and 200 locations and saying, hey, list next to Kroger, list next to Target, list next to Walmart and Amazon. And the opportunity here for you is that if you integrate more tightly with us, you can do things like incentivize shoppers to click on your links as opposed to clicking on the other retailer links. So we're kind of trying to actually give your regional grocer like a significant leg up in terms of being competitive. Because right now, for instance, if you wanted to order your groceries online, chances are you're going to start on either Google or you're going to go straight to Amazon. You're going to search for order groceries online, in which case Kroger, Target, Walmart, Amazon, they're going to be the first results. Or you're just going to think, okay, I'm going straight to Amazon. In this particular case, if you catch a person at the moment that they're willing to make that transition from being a physical grocery store shopper to somebody who's going to place their first online order, and you're incentivizing that off of an advertisement that a brand is running, and you actually capture that traffic because you've hit the consumer with the correct message, be that incentive to place your order with my retailer, we're actually providing them an opportunity to, maintain or grow their market share from their in-store shopping to their digital shopping as people increasingly make that transition, instead of just like naturally kind of bleeding off market share as people go to Google or go to Amazon to find the solution for how they're going to order their groceries online for the first time.
What percentage of that middle tier, that target audience you have, doesn't have a curbside pickup or delivery option?
An increasingly small percentage. So we have a list of the top 100 grocery retailers in the country. We kind of, say that category number 2 starts with number 6 on down. So there's only like 5 really, really big ones. And then of those, 6 to number 100, it's like 85% of them have online ordering at this point. There are a couple, really noteworthy holdouts. Trader Joe's, for instance, I mean, they're staying away from this and really kind of doubling down on that strategy. But for the most part, when consumer behavior is shifting as dramatically as it is towards online ordering, it's kind of something you can't afford not to do at this point as a retailer.
You mentioned that this is kind of an alternative to, or a more efficient CPC type campaign for these retailers. Mm-hmm. How is that priced? Is it on an auction basis like CPC often is, or what's your pitch to retailers to get them to invest their dollars there?
At this point, the pricing model, and I mean, I should, kind of clause this whole thing out. We're a pretty early stage company. So ask me 2 weeks ago, ask me in 2 weeks, and you're probably going to get 3 different answers. But at this point, our pricing model is basically tied directly to KPIs and performance around the retailers that we're working with. So we typically collect a fee when a new account is registered and then when a transaction is placed. So even comparing it to like pay-per-click marketing, we've tried to model it out in such a way where it's like, hey, we could bring you 1 million bot clicks, but that's not going to do anything for you guys. So therefore, we're not going to make you pay for it. We're going to tie this in directly with the metrics that you care the most about, which is like, new accounts registered and transactions that are actually placed.
So can you talk to me a little bit about what go-to-market has looked like to this point and how that will continue to grow? Because it seems like there are just a lot of parties here that you have to get lined up and onboarded. Even if it is simple, it just seems like a lot of people that you have to get circled around at once.
Yeah, my gosh. I was saying that when it came to signing a new restaurant on EatStreet, we would walk in with a 12-pack of beer. Maybe it was Mick Golden and a 2-page contract. And, 15 minutes later, we'd walk out and the beer would be gone. Like we'd have left that, but we'd have a signature on the contract. And, you rinse and repeat that sales process 15,000 times in a row and you have yourself an online food ordering marketplace. This is obviously a dramatically different kind of sales cycle and has been a tremendous learning experience for me and Alex, along the way. Obviously, even these smaller retailers that we're talking to, probably sell $1 billion plus of groceries every single year. So that's not the kind of conversation where, you just strike up something and 15 minutes later you have a commitment. Enterprise selling has been in its own way, very much a kind of, learning experience for us. What's more, obviously, having a marketplace, the first question that the CPGs ask is, what retailers are you guys working with? And then likewise, when we talk to a retailer, they say, what brands are going to be sending us traffic? Our way of kind of kickstarting that process, and I mentioned it very briefly earlier, is actually, just like basically scrape and find product pages for certain retailers to basically seed out a market. So even if we don't have like a formal working relationship with Kroger, we can send you to the Kroger page for Diet Coke or Swiffer or whatever. And then we use that to go to the CPG and say, hey, we can make your ads shoppable at any city in the United States because there's either a Kroger, there's a Walmart, there's a Target, or Amazon services it. So just by having like product pages for those four, it's already intrinsically better than sending somebody just back to Swiffer.com. That's kind of how we've gotten the flywheel going. And once you have that kind of advertising budget that's thrown behind it, part of this is like, it's something that I've actually witnessed because we've kind of cracked that nut and we've been experiencing some pretty awesome growth recently. And a lot of it is still, kind of dreams and aspirations as an early stage company, but it's our expectation that retailers will look at this and say, wow, if you have that kind of traffic that you're generating off of branded advertisements, this is an opportunity that we really can't pass. And since you guys are less expensive than what Mark Zuckerberg is charging us to run ads directly on his platforms, this is also like super positive for, the growth of our own retail chain. Yeah, it's been, an incredible learning experience of kind of understanding the ins and outs and intricacies of this business, which is far more complicated, I think, than we ever expected it to be. We've grown the team to have a really, really solid business development person who comes from this background. I'd say, every day I'm still learning and surprised at something, new that happens. It's a lot of bumping into walls until you find the perfect fit. And then after that, something really kind of magical happens and you're off to the races.
Have you been in market long enough to have some big experiments play out to see if your assumptions worked out and if the experience for retailer, brand, everybody involved was what you expected?
Yes, with an asterisk. I think that we expect the results to, be even more compelling going forward in the next couple of months and have just like a lot more case studies. I would reference our first, kind of pilot that we ran. We worked with a grocer that's in the top 40 in the United States, and we worked with a cereal brand. And in conjunction of those two, we were able to, with the incentives that retailer was adding to make them the destination of choice for the shopper, we were able to account for 30% of the new account registrations for that retailer. So when you look at a retailer who's selling, again, $1 billion worth of food every single year, and the fact that they're investing heavily into e-commerce and looking at, the fact that we were 30% of all growth in that category for them, Alex and I were practically jumping up and down when we saw those results. Now it's just like taking that case study and getting 9 more of them. Talk to me again at the end of the summer and knock on wood, we'll have them.
What's been the most challenging part about finding a champion in these retailers?
The most challenging part, again, comes from the fact that, well, first of all, I'll just call it out straight up. Like I've raised money and been involved in startups in a variety of roles, but like I don't even consider myself to be a natural salesperson necessarily. Like that's not my background and it's not Alex's background. So we're grateful for, our new business development team member to help us out in those regards. But like for me, it's having the, discipline to send off 100 LinkedIn messages knowing that 99 of them will go unanswered or will fall upon deaf ears. It's also the discipline of, even though in my mind it's like, hey, we have a solution that's going to be really great for you guys, being open to consistent and constant feedback in ways that we could be more valuable so that we could reposition this such that that original LinkedIn reach out, really says something that's exciting enough that somebody takes the meeting. I'd say that, we went from shooting, 1 out of 1,000 down to, maybe now 1 out of 50 people are responding to us. So, the message continues to evolve. And that's just basically like being willing to be a learner, every day and reframe assumptions that you thought were totally core to the bedrock of the business. And then also just the daily grind of, selling. I'd say that those two things, probably are the most mentally taxing. But it's also cool. I mean, it's exciting. Every time we do land a meeting, it's an exciting moment for us.
How do you think about raising capital for this company? You and your co-founder have been through EatStreet, then you spent time at Generator. I imagine you have a pretty good Rolodex of people that you could go and have some pretty serious conversations with pretty quickly. How are you thinking about going that path for this business?
We have raised about $1.1 million. One of the things Alex and I said when we started this business off was that we didn't want to have to raise a lot of money for consumer acquisition. And being a pure B2B play where our customers are the brands and the retailers, we don't have to spend anything on consumer acquisition. But if you look at where EatStreet's $50 million has gone, a very large percentage has gone dedicated to acquiring new diners one by one through pay-per-click advertising. And that was a game that, kind of ironically, because we're helping support other people on pay-per-click advertising, it was something that we ourselves didn't want to pursue this next time around. Just because it is so darn expensive and, there's always going to be somebody else who's raising money and it turns into an arms race. So we were looking for a business that had low cost of acquisition costs, at least relative to the size and value of whatever that customer was going to be. And a business that therefore probably didn't need a lot of capital, stand up on its own. And most of the infused capital would be just expanding out our sales pipeline as opposed to, necessarily the intrinsic survival of the business itself. The comparison that I like to make, and this is one of the things that keeps me up at night because I get so excited, is for us to turn on a new digital ad that sends more traffic our way off of a brand, it doesn't take any kind of incremental cost for us whatsoever. And if we can continue to capture large and larger buckets of money on our brand side, what we're kind of building in a weird comparison is like an Instacart, where we have digital ads running, and then that actually leads to new people registering accounts and placing transactions. Instacart's raised almost $2 billion. They raised that money from Sequoia and, a bunch of other kind of blue chip VCs. We look at this and say, hey, if we could capture billions of dollars with the Procter & Gamble's ad spend and triage that into the local retailer shopping carts, we're basically building Instacart, but instead of Sequoia, our VC who's not taking equity is P&G, and they're the ones who are actually pumping the money into the ads, which is where, Instacart has spent all of its money anyways. And we can kind of enjoy the spoils of building a similar business to that, but the need for actually going out and diluting ourselves, raising giant equity rounds, is not nearly at least as mandatory to success as it would be, with our previous company like EatStreet and anybody who really has to do a lot of aggressive pay-per-click marketing.
So when are you moving to Cincinnati?
I actually went through the brandery. I spent, 5 months in Cincinnati about a year ago. Prior to this whole quarantine thing, was going to Cincinnati on practically a monthly basis. So huge fans of the place. That being said, Minnesota, if you can get past the winters, is a totally magical place to live. And we have Target and General Mills in our backyard. So we've got some pretty great local potential customers as well.
Awesome. Well, Eric, if people want to follow Pear Commerce after the show, where should they go?
I would say go to pearcommerce.com. That's a good place to start. We're on Twitter at Pear Commerce. And then, of course, if you want to talk to me directly, my email is Eric with a C for cool at pearcommerce.com.
And one follow-up question on that. If anyone here works in the CPG industry who's listening, what kind of people should they connect with internally to talk with you?
Yeah, so we like talking to people who are on the e-commerce team of brands. We enjoy, people who are on the shopper marketing side of the business. But completely candidly, if you work for a brand and you feel like this is still like a little bit outside of your wheelhouse, I'd still love to talk and get your feedback or see if there's anybody else in your organization that would be excited about this. So if you work for a brand, please, if in doubt, reach out. Like, I would love to talk.
This episode of Upside is sponsored by Tresta. Tresta is an app for iPhone and Android that lets you do business calling and texting from anywhere with no hardware, just the smartphone you're already using. Tresta is the best business phone app on the market, whether you're a founder or freelancer just starting your business or you're already established. Growing your network and your business is all about communication. You've got to be available no matter where you are. Tresta offers the call management features that empower you to communicate smarter and more efficiently, like auto attendance, call recording, user groups, and more. And you don't need any special equipment, just the smartphone you're already using. Tresta is easy to configure, so you can set everything up yourself, all online. Tresta's virtual phone system makes it easier and more affordable than ever to set up a fully functioning mobile office. It's just $15 per user per month with no contract. So start your free 30-day trial today at www.tresta.com/upside. That's www.tresta.com/upside.
All right, Eric, we just spoke with Eric of Pear Commerce. Where do you want to start our deal memo?
I just had like a instant visualization of that Spider-Man looking at Spider-Man meme.
Haven't seen it.
What?
I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen? It's literally two Spider-Mans just pointing at each other like, hey.
All right, hold on. Let me ask the Googs about this. My good friend, the Googs. Where did that originate from?
I don't know. I just know it's a thing whenever like, all right, this has gone on too far. I thought you would have known what I was talking about. So here we go. We're going to twist back into your question, Jay. We're going to get off of the Spider-Man looking at Spider-Man meme, and we're going to dive into CPG. We know it's a big space. It's a huge space. Some of the largest companies in the world are in this space. Procter & Gamble, and they're doing billions and billions of dollars. You have Unilever, they're doing billions and billions of dollars. You have Kellogg and
billions and billions.
Billions and billions and billions of dollars. This is a big space. It is consumer grocery. It is consumer household goods. It is the thing that every household across America buys. So we're looking at a big market. We know that going in. I think when you put it in the three buckets we have here, it's definitely in that big bucket. And when it's ever in that big bucket, I feel like getting a specific number pretty much becomes more a game of fluff your ego than material benefit. So I'm saying big bucket here for the industry, Jay.
Billions and billions and billions of dollars. Yeah, we didn't get a ton of numbers here. What Eric did tell us was that this service is actually free for the CPG companies, the brands of the world. It is paid for by the retailers within the Pear Commerce app, almost as an alternative to Google AdSense, as a way to advertise their goods that are in their actual stores to the customers who are in proximity looking for it right now. And some of the compelling numbers that we did get from Eric was that in their pilot, Pear Commerce accounted for 30% of new accounts to retailers, which is a big number, Eric. Another big number.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of big numbers here. Obviously, that's a huge value prop for those retailers. I like that the retailer only pays when they get a new sign up. I like that they say it's less expensive than pay-per-click. We'll see how that boils out as more pilots come down is it down the pipe or down the pike?
I believe it's pike. I've looked this up several times. It's been a talking point in a lot of conversations for me, and I'm almost certain that it's down the pike. Let me Google this too.
Oh my God. This episode sponsored by Google.
Well, listen, if my friend the Googs has more answers than you, I'm going to talk to my friend the Googs on the deal memo instead of you.
Okay, that's fine.
The phrase down the pike has been established to mean in the course of events, or more recently, in the future. Pike here is sort of short for turnpike, and the phrase refers metaphorically to something coming from further along the road. Recently has been mistaken as down the pipe, as turnpikes are relatively rare, and the phrase in the pipeline has a similar meaning referring for things to come. So I guess that is to say, originated as down the pike, has morphed into down the pipe, and not necessarily mistakenly, but because it is more relevant to contemporary culture.
And listeners, just as I'm expecting, you were sticking around in this deal memo for that exact analysis. Let's move further down the road of this deal memo, Jay, and let's get to one other point that I like here, which is that because they're saying it's more expensive and it's because it's more directly tied to outcomes, I think that's a good thing for retailers. Because when you look at the Krogers and Walmarts and Targets and really just retailers in general, those are very high volume, low margin businesses. So anything they can do to eke out a few more basis points of profit margin is absolutely worth it.
I agree. What did you think about the fact that there are, and we asked this in the interview, just inherently more stakeholders in this whole ecosystem to get to play together? You know, you not only have to get the brands into the app, but you have to get the retailers to want to buy into the service. It just seems like a lot of people you have to sell on the service. But Eric did bring up that they can access some of the brand and retailer data mechanically, even before they have those conversations. So did you have any thoughts on that point?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a shadow for me. The industry itself is huge, and that's a very great thing. But it's also just old. So there's a lot of structures in place and a lot of things happening behind the scenes and a lot of things that were built for a industry that was booming in the 50s and 60s that have stayed within the industry. So there's more levels of bureaucracy and there's more consolidation too on top of all of that, which means that you're playing with bigger players who have deeply entrenched habits and sign-offs and approvals. Like in a CPG company, they have sales departments. And when you think about like a startup, sales is going out and finding new customers. Well, in the CPG world, there are no real new customers. You've been selling to Kroger for 100 years. So you're going to keep selling to Kroger. So sales is just more like internal sales. And I think the industry in general is just so mature that bringing innovation to it is just going to be hard.
Real maturity, something I know a lot about. Let's turn our conversation over to Eric as a founder.
All right, how about you start on this one? Give me your hot takes.
So what we didn't touch on in our intro, but we learned in our interview, before Generator, Eric was the co-founder of EatStreet, which powered more than 15,000 restaurants nationwide, fed millions of people. That company had an exit. So he's got a little bit of a pedigree, if you want to use that when judging him as a founder. I think his experience with EatStreet, as well as being around a ton of different founders through Generator and being within Generator, you get excited about somebody that has that much experience in the startup realm, starting a new company. And in a space like this, where you are working with big, mature companies, I think that plays a really strong role in his ability to make this company move forward. This is something that not a lot of people could dream up as an idea, which, you know, we talked about how big of a pain this is to measure effectiveness of ads for big consumer brands. There could be a lot of people who might come up with a solution, but being able to actually execute on that and work with some of these big companies and find a way in, I think takes a little bit more of or you're definitely benefited by being more of a seasoned entrepreneur, which Eric is. So to me, that was all positive.
And he has a great name, so that's also a positive. But yeah, I would agree with everything that you kind of laid out there. Obviously, when you're going to go disrupt or cause change in a very old industry, you can't be struggling with the concept of being an entrepreneur as well. So he's definitely demonstrated his ability to be an entrepreneur, be around entrepreneurs, and focus on the problem. Yeah, I don't have any shadows about Eric as a founder.
And not only Eric, but one of his co-founders at EatStreet is also a co-founder here at Pear Commerce. So just having that history between two people who have proven that they can work together and build a technical solution, doing it again, another positive. So I don't think we need to spend much more time talking about Eric as a founder. Yeah, to me, checks all the boxes.
All right. So Jay, what do you want to see in the next 6 to 18 months for Pear Commerce?
I'm going to take the Netflix angle here and say that I want to see more pilots.
Oh, no, you took mine. But also, that's pretty good.
More, I was going to go with like American Airlines at first.
Yeah, that would have been nice too. Or you could have done like a stovetop, like a pilot burner.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I want to see some more pilots. it seems like, the pilot they had great results. Can you replicate that? How many times does that ever get saturated? We need to see some length of time here to see that these pilots then renew and continue renewing. It's just early on in terms of being in market, and the solution makes theoretical sense. It seems like they're having good results. So to me, really the big question mark is, okay, let's see if it continues to be real and play out. We're sitting in a very unique time here with COVID-19 and retailers, e-commerce retailers having a heyday, and a lot of retailers probably really struggling. So if Pear Commerce can make it through this, it seems like they're probably going to be in a pretty good position. But you have any other answers outside of pilots, Eric?
Yeah, I guess I'd want to hear more. So, we talked about how there's all of these parties that you have to get on board, and you got to start with the retailers and the brands and all of that. But then this only works if consumers are making and flowing through from hitting buy now to actually buying, right? So for me, I want to see how that consumer journey develops over the next 18 months, how it goes from what currently exists to iterating on the data that they receive and feedback that they receive, and how seamless that process gets, and how they can be able to use that as a huge value indicator for their discussions with retailers and brands.
All right, dear listener, it's your turn. Let us know what you think about Pear Commerce and this opportunity. You can tweet at us at UpsideFM or email us hello@upside.fm. Otherwise, I'll talk to you next week. That's all for this week. Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's guest, so shoot us an email at hello@upside.fm or find us on Twitter at UpsideFM. We'll be back here next week at the same time talking to another founder in our quest to find upside outside of Silicon Valley. If you or someone you know would make a good guest for our show, please email us or find us on Twitter and let us know. And if you love our show, please leave us a review on iTunes. That goes a long way in helping us spread the word and continue to help bring high-quality guests to the show. Eric and I decided there were a couple things we wanted to share with you at the end of the podcast, and so here we go. Eric Hornung and Jay Klaus are the founding parties of the Upside podcast. At the time of this recording, we do not own equity or other financial interest in the companies which appear on this show. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own opinion and do not reflect the opinions of Duff & Phelps LLC and its affiliates, Unreal Collective LLC and its affiliates, or any entity which employ us. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. We have not considered your specific financial situation nor provided any investment advice on this show. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Never mind, bro, that can't be matched. I'm lighting it on fire, used to run victory laps, and still I'm not even tired. It's all about the timing, yeah, that's what they say. Well, I'ma keep on rhyming, find a way and get it.